you have to build your business. When the times are good, you have to have the discipline to make good decisions instead of just running, straight ahead. But when times are not as good, you need to have the discipline to continue to push forward and make good decisions in those moments.
I mean, it's coaching in cars, man.
A lot of limiting beliefs out there, thinking, how in the world am I going to accomplish something like that?
Not dissimilar to anybody.
The greatest risk we were afraid of that did not come to fruition is...
If I started a new business tomorrow, the first thing I would do is hire a coach.
All right, so welcome back to Coaching in Cars. Very special guest today, Mr. Marc White of Steve White Volkswagen here in town. Also owns two other dealerships. You have the Audi dealership and the Volvo dealership, correct?
So thanks for having me, Ren. We have Volkswagen, Audi, and then as of January, we added Volvo.
Yeah, so when we first met, you told me the story about how you got into owning a dealership and all of that, and I just found it super compelling that there's like a pretty deep family bloodline of owning a dealership in your family, and you kind of got away from it for a little bit and then came back. So I'm just curious, can you tell me the story behind, your dad starting the dealership, your brother's in it, and now you're in it? So I'm just curious about the history of all of that.
Yeah, well, I guess what you would call second gen. So my dad was the founder, and a little bit of his story. He had kind of grown up around the car business in the sense of his dad would sell a few used cars here and there, but not really any kind of like big operation. And so he was the first person in his family to go to college. He went to like a 2-year school and then went on to a business college up in Charlotte. And, got married to my mom when they were young. They were in their early 20s. They were high school sweethearts. And, they had my oldest brother, Steve Jr. And he had a good job working at a place called Douglas Aircraft and thought life was going great. And so he went and bought a brand new car, bought a Volkswagen Beetle, because that's kind of what you do when you're married and you got a wife and a baby, you get a new car. Well, not long after he bought that car, something happened. He got laid off. And he thought back to a conversation that he had with the sales manager at the Volkswagen dealership in Charlotte, who said, hey, you should come sell cars for us. And his response when he had a job was, well, I could never do that because you guys are a bunch of crooks. You'd never go in the car business. But after he got laid off, he said that offer sounded a lot more appealing. Yeah. So he went back to that sales manager and he said, hey, I'd like to talk to you more about that car sales position. And that's how he got started in the car business. It was selling Volkswagens in Charlotte, North Carolina in the early 1960s. So I came along. I had 2 older brothers that were in the car business. And when I was coming along, my dad said, I don't think I can do another son in the car business. The first 2 have worn me out. And so, I would hang around the car dealerships. I loved being there, but I never thought of it as a career. So when I went to school at UNC Chapel Hill. I did what my buddies were doing. They were going to law school, and so I studied political science and history. I was not a good student. I think my dad recognized that, and that's probably why he didn't say, hey, I want you to go in the car business. But my senior year at North Carolina, he called me and he said, what do you think you want to do for a living? And I said, well, I think I want to go into investments, maybe do Edward Jones. And he said, well, you could do that, or we have a car dealership in Greenville, South Carolina, and I kind of had you in mind to be involved with it. And I said, well, you didn't want me to go in the car business. And he said, well, I didn't want you to think you had that waiting on you. So I thought that sounded like a really good offer for a bad student that really, wasn't sure what he wanted to do with his career. So that's kind of how I got started in the business.
Yeah, and you've probably gotten, not to demean the college education system, that's not the purpose, but you've probably gotten a master's in business taking over this dealership and running it over the last, even decade. Just the amount of things that come to you and the amount of things that you learn in the moment, it's invaluable. You couldn't put a dollar amount on it, going through a traditional school system. So you've probably gotten you got your political science degree, but you also probably have a master's in business at this point.
Well, I don't know about that, but I will tell you that, when I came into the dealership, I knew the reputation that second generation car dealers kids had. There's actually a term for it. It's called PhD, and it stands for Papa Had a Dealership. It's not a very flattering term because I think a lot of times kids go into the family business and maybe they're not as driven as the first generation. Yep. But I really wanted to be different, whatever that looked like. I wanted to have a dealership that I felt like that I could be proud of.
Yeah.
And so when I came into it, we had about 25, 30 employees. This was 2002. We had Volkswagen and Audi here in Greenville. And I really just wanted to try to grow the business. And I didn't know what that looked like. But I knew that my dad knew what he was doing. And so I tried to listen to him. And then he was smart enough to get me involved in peer groups. So we call them 20 groups in the car business, but it's a group of 20 dealers that have the same franchise as what you have. And I would go to these meetings as a young, like an early 20s guy and just try to soak it up and then come back. And I was so young and dumb that I would just come back and try things.
Yeah.
And so that's how I kind of got, like you said, you call it a master's. I think just coming back and trying to implement processes is how I got started.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always, in business, and I coach businesses, it's always a learning opportunity all the time to learn something from somebody. And it's not even that they're saying anything groundbreaking that you wouldn't, know yourself, but sometimes the perspective of just an outsider looking in and saying, have you thought about this, changes everything. It changes all decision making. It changes the trajectory of a company. To have somebody, just a voice in the room say, hey, you got a lot of good things going, but have you thought about these things? And then helping you see around those corners. So, this peer group that you've had, obviously you've probably given a lot of value into that, but you've also taken a lot of value out of that just in the perspective of 20 people sitting in a room talking about basically the exact same business that they're operating in the same areas.
Yeah, I would say when I came into that, I had very little to offer, because I didn't know anything. And I would just sit there and listen and ask questions and just soak it up. And I would come home with 4 or 5 pages of notes. And probably I would come home and overwhelm my people because I would want to do 10 things. And, somewhere along the way, one of the guys was, like a mentor to me. He said, hey, come back with maybe one idea and actually do it and do it well and commit to it. And so maybe my modification of that was, well, how about one idea per department?
Yeah.
But I think, as you grow and mature in business, then you can start to offer something. Maybe you have your own ideas and you can say, oh yeah, that's happened to me. But I think one thing that really helped me early on was just being open-minded and just saying, hey, that might work for me. Let's go try that. Let's commit to it, and let's do it for 90 days or 6 months, and just we're gonna go all in on this idea.
Yeah. The difference between a knower's mindset and a grower's mindset is huge, especially when it comes to growing a business. If you're a knower and you just know everything, you're never gonna take anything out of it. You're just gonna think that you know better. But then if you have a grower's mindset of just constantly learning, constantly getting better, this relentless pursuit of just getting better and learning new things, because not everybody knows everything and everybody is some kind of dumb. At the end of the day, you can't know everything, right? So I think it's going in with the right mindset into a peer group like that. And you talked about how you probably didn't bring a lot of value at the beginning. Yeah, it's like a bank. You took a lot of loans out, knowledge-wise, for a long time, and now you've had the ability to pay those loans back to other people that have come into that circle and into that group, and start to build your balance, build your balance sheet, so to speak.
Yeah, because I'm the old guy now.
Yeah, in terms of social equity, right?
Yeah,
so
that's right.
good. So every dealership that I've ever been a part of, or I know somebody that works inside of, they all have something that differentiates them from every other dealership, and they can communicate it sometimes they can't. Sometimes they say we have the lowest prices, which I don't feel like is a differentiator. You know, a race to the bottom isn't a differentiator. But what would you say, you know, if somebody has never bought a vehicle from you, what are they going to get from you that's going to be different than what they're going to get at another dealership in this area or even up in the Charlotte area?
Yeah, well, I think in some ways it's changed over the years, and in some ways it's stayed the same. And so I think early on, I did want to, I recognized that car dealership visits were pain points. I mean, like, people kind of see them like going to the dentist. It's like, I got to buy a car, you know, it's going to be a headache. I'm going to have to deal with not just finding the right car, but then, you know, how do I pay a fair price, and what about the financing, and should I buy any of those products in that office with that guy? And it's all, and it takes forever.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, early on I couldn't necessarily put this into words, but I knew that at the very least we could kind of lessen some of those pain points. And like, let's make this a quicker process. Like, you know, okay, we can move quickly on this. We can help the customer find out, is this the right fit? We can shorten up this negotiating time and not make it so grinding. And let's have efficiencies with our staffing. Let's make sure that we've got enough sales managers, enough finance managers, enough detailers to get this car ready, so that we can move people through this process. And I mean, sometimes, like, you know, the bar is not that high. It's not like you have to be in and out in 15 minutes. I think if we can get people through the whole process in like under 2 hours, like, that's pretty good, because a lot of times they've been there all day, or 3 or 4 hours, and that's painful. Nobody wants to go through that.
Especially if you have kids.
Yeah.
You know, my kids running around, and then they're coloring on the walls in the dealership, and all of a sudden I feel like my bill is going up and up and up because of the instruction that my kids are giving inside.
But then, you know, I would say more recently, like, that's kind of been a steady, you know, like, let's make this easy. We want it to be easy to spend money with. That's something we talk about a lot. Like, I do business with places where it's like, I'm trying to spend money with you, and it's almost like you don't want to take my money. So let's make it easy. Let's remove as many roadblocks as we can. I think in recent years we've been able to grow. I mean, like, for example, we have about 300 used cars in stock right now. And that's probably, you know, one of the biggest selections around. And so we try to have cars at every price point. I've got $2,000 used cars, and I've got $200,000 used cars. And that's just a more mature, you know, kind of where we are with our business has gotten to a point where, you know, we can have a lot of inventory, a lot to choose from. You know, have, you know, a full-time training manager, some of these kind of luxuries that you just have to get to a certain point to be able to afford.
Well, and COVID really kind of set a lot of dealerships in a little bit of a tailspin, because it really, like, the recovery of that, I don't feel like it's completely happened yet. But, you know, prices went way up on vehicles. You couldn't get vehicles. They were stuck down in Mexico with, you know, they needed chips, and the chip manufacturers were shut down. Like, all of this stuff was going on inside of, you know, the dealership world and the new car world, that a lot of dealerships were forced to spend all of their cash flow on going out and finding used vehicles, probably overpaying for those vehicles at the time. And if they didn't move them quickly, they got stuck with those. And then you have all of this capital tied up in inventory, and you're kind of stuck. And it sent a lot of dealerships in a tailspin. You know, we came from Omaha, and the amount of dealerships that got bought up during that time because financially they had no cash flow was pretty crazy. You know, they consolidated the market, and now there's really, you know, a handful of owners of dealerships in the entire Omaha metro area that, you know, bought up a bunch of dealerships that just couldn't make it during COVID. And now we're dealing with, you know, trade and tariff and all of this other stuff that's going on. And it's just a testament to, you have to build your business. When the times are good, you have to have the discipline to make good decisions instead of just running, you know, straight ahead. But when times are not as good, you need to have the discipline to continue to push forward and make good decisions in those moments, even if it means investing a little more than you're comfortable with, to, you know, reap a better gain on the back end. Because the businesses that are acting reactively during those times are the ones that are going to suffer in the end, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And, you know, to go back to COVID, I mean, it is probably one of the most interesting times in the car business. A lot of folks don't know it, but it's actually some of the most profitable times that our industry's ever experienced, because all of a sudden every car was transacting at MSRP, which has never happened before, and it's not happening now. So
or more.
Things are a lot more normal.
Yeah.
But during that time, I think, you know, one thing that really helped, you know, so my GM and I, you know, we just sit down and talk about things every day. And, you know, right now we're probably talking a lot about tariffs, but back then we were probably talking a lot about COVID and supply chain shortages. And I think one thing that really helped us was just keeping a steady hand. Like you said, keep your foot on the gas. And so for us, what that meant was, all right, a steady hand is we're not going to charge over sticker price for a new car, period. We're never going to do that. If a customer is willing to pay us the asking price for the car, that's a fair deal. And let's focus on the next 5, 10, 20 years of this relationship with the customer, and not how can we maximize our profit today on this one customer. We have 5 people that want to buy this one car, so let's try to sell it to the person that's local. You know, like let's reward our customers, you know, with this car. And then the other thing we did was, the used car market was just as crazy as the new car market, if not more so. So a lot of dealers, they took their foot off the gas when it came to used vehicle acquisition. They just said, it's just too volatile right now. Like, let's just sell new cars. We'll trade for some used cars, but we're going to be super conservative. And what happened with that is their used car business kind of dwindled down, and it's just really hard to build back up. And we kind of took the opposite approach of, hey, it's very volatile, but let's just lean into this. Let's actually add to our used vehicle inventory. And we're going to have some months where we pay the price for that, like the market changed, we've got to wholesale some used cars and take a bath. But what's happened now is it's just built on itself. So when you get from 100 used cars inventory to 150 to 200, you know, you start trading for more cars, and it's almost like that snowball effect. You just can't stop it anymore. I mean, it just, once you get to that point, as long as you keep your foot on the gas, it's just going to keep growing. And that's been a real blessing for us. Yeah, and
you know, to extract, you know, something that you said in there really like helped me, and will probably help the listener to differentiate. Realistically, during COVID and even now with the tariff and all of that, what you guys are valuing, which I do feel is different than a lot of other dealerships out there, is you guys said, let's sell to somebody locally, somebody that we know, like all of, you know, you valued the relationship, the long-term relationship with a customer, because at the end of the day, those people are going to come back and they're going to buy from you, or they're going to tell their friends and family that live here about you and about their experience. And then what's going to happen in turn is it's going to bring more business to you organically, so you don't have to spend a bunch of money on marketing. Whereas most dealerships during that time valued the transaction. They would sell to anybody. They would ship cars across the United States at $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 over the sticker value. I mean, my wife and I looked at an Escalade during that time, and we couldn't find a dealership that wasn't $30,000 over sticker. We found one in Missouri that would sell for sticker, but we could never get our hands on one, and it was because they were valuing people that lived locally, right? And they value that relationship. So I think that's the big difference, is you guys are valuing and building relationships with your customers instead of just a transaction, because most dealerships are just transaction based. Well, and that I think is, you know, now we went from 25 or 30 employees back in 2002 to now we have 150 employees. And it's been interesting to kind of see how the business just matures and changes over time. And one thing I think that's been really fun lately, my GM Brian and I, we do a new hire lunch once a quarter, and we usually have 12 or 15, you know, new hires in those meetings. And it's just interesting to kind of go around the room and hear, like, how did you hear about our dealership? Like, what brought you here? An interesting phenomenon is we've had a lot of people that have bought cars from us that then come and work for us, or their family members, like, hey, my dad was working for you and he raved about what a great employer you are, and so that's what brought me here. I think that's really fun to see, you know, that
customer transaction actually can kind of have these dividends that you're not really expecting.
Isn't it great to get that feedback?
Oh,
like
it's so
another
fun.
generation comes back to you and says, you employed my dad and he talked about you and how great of an employer. Like, what a flattering feeling of we've kept the quality. And you brought up at the very beginning of our conversation today the stigma that's attached with a second generation business, and it's like you've really bucked that stigma at the end of the day. When you hear things like that, it's incredible. Or people that had a great experience buying a vehicle from you, it's just super cool that you get that feedback. You get to like close that feedback loop and then employ them, which is super cool, because the ripple that creates to send them out and now go create that experience for other people is just like incredible. The amount of people that you get to interact with and really like change their experience and change their view on what the industry standard is. Super cool.
Well, I tell our new hires, I usually try to say, hey, we want to provide like a really good place for you to work, but we're far from perfect, and you're going to have bad days at work. Hopefully you have more good days than bad days, but we really try to instill a caring culture in our business. And I think I talked to you when we first met about our caring team, and I think that so our caring team is something we started. Actually, interesting timing on that as well. We kicked this off in February of 2020. So right before COVID kind of ramped up, we created this group of individuals that we have one person from each department in the dealership. So, for example, somebody from Volkswagen sales, somebody from Audi service, and so on. And we really we give them a significant budget to be able to spend each year in caring for our employees. And that can look like doing fun events, we've got a Greenville Drive Family Day coming up, yep. Food Truck Friday, but it also is kind of leaning into, hey, good things and bad things happen in life, and we spend more hours at our place of work than we do a lot of places, sometimes even at home. And so we want this to be a good place to work and where we're looking after each other. And so when we've got, people go through hard times, and sometimes they have needs. They lose a family member, they're hospitalized, but also they get married or they have a new baby. And we want to celebrate the great times, but also kind of lean into those hard times. Yeah. And sometimes people need, a loan, or they need, to have a meal delivered to their house just to feel loved and cared for.
Yeah.
And so I think getting back to, having the right kind of culture and having a place that is a caring environment, that's what we hope for.
Yeah. So you said something earlier on that I wanted to come back to. It really pinged a thought in my head, and I've kind of been rolling it around in my head as we've been driving here. So you said, you go to this peer group, you get 4 pages of notes, you'd bring them back, you'd have like 10 or 15 really good ideas, and they would all fall flat. And it's so funny because the 2 episodes ago, I talked about that with somebody as well, where I just said, like, most business owners, have a lot of really, really good ideas. They go read a book, like all the ideas out there are published, how to find the right people and put them in the right seats, and how to connect your purpose to the company, and how to monitor performance, and all of these things. They're all published, they exist, and most business owners have come in contact with those concepts and have tried to implement them inside of their business, and then it doesn't work for them, and then they say that tool doesn't work. But in all reality, what happened to you was the same thing. The business just was not optimized and set up to be able to implement those good ideas at that time. It took time to be able to build out what you needed to do to be able to implement those ideas, whether it's you didn't have the right people to implement them, you didn't have a good filter, you didn't have the right process in order to be able to implement. Something inside of your business was not optimized to be able to implement all those good ideas. Because I bet if you looked back at those 4 pages of notes, you've been able to implement all of those ideas over the last 20 years, that you learned on day 1 or day 2 of that peer group. Because the business started to optimize itself and allow itself to be able to take on some of those really good ideas.
Yeah, probably the good ones and the bad ones.
Yeah, you got to have a good filter in a good person that's a good filter in your business that says, hey, Mark, that's a really great idea, but we're not ready for that. Or, hey, Mark, that's a really terrible idea, but the other 5 that you came up with are really good, and I think we're going to run with those.
Yeah, and I think, I would say, now almost 46-year-old Mark is a little more of a steady hand, just because I'm old and I've seen things and done things. But I think probably what was missing back then was, is this the right thing to do? Like, is this idea, this process, this new vendor, whatever it might look like, is this the right thing for us to do right now? And I think maybe getting more buy-in, or like you said, finding out that, like, hey, this is not the right thing. But then once you decide this is what we're doing, then we're not trying this out. Like, we are committing to this. We are going all in on this. We're going to say, for this period of time, this is what we're going to do. Yep. And we're committed to it. And there's no trying. I mean, we're not going to dabble in this. We're going to be committed to it.
Yeah, there are some ideas that you should fire a bullet on and not a cannonball. There are other ideas that if you have the right people that can go execute for you, your communication's really clear, they're very connected to the purpose, and we have a good performance inside the industry, you can fire a cannonball and you can, take the time to be able to, aim as you fire cannonballs. But some businesses are small enough that if they fire a cannonball, it can kill them, so it's like having the discipline to say, what's a bullet and what's a cannonball? What's a good idea, but we're 60 to 70% there. Let's fire a couple bullets. Let's see what the market tells us. Let's get a little research, and then let's come back and recalibrate and re-aim. Then once we know the right trajectory that we need to post, that was my financial advisor. He just saw us. I'm going to get a text message here in about 3 seconds. When you get aimed to where you need to go, firing bullets, then you fire the cannonball because you know where it's going to go and you know where it's going to land, right? So it's like, when we scaled the foundation company that I worked at to 120 million, we fired a lot of bullets, to try to calibrate where we needed to go. And the amount of time that we had to fire bullets over time started to dwindle to where it's like we could fire one bullet, get a lot of feedback, and then we could fire a cannonball and we were dead on. We just became really accurate at predicting the market, and we became really accurate at predicting the results of the actions that we were going to put in. And that was a testament to having the right people in our organization that went out and executed, but also having them connected to a sense of purpose. We monitored performance. We were so ingrained in what we did that we could fire cannonballs with accuracy over and over and over again and grow it from 18 to 30, and then the next year to 45, and then the next year to 60. And it's like all of a sudden we had this parabolic growth curve because we could predict the result before it even happened. So
yeah, I love that. I think in the car business, the way I would kind of relate to that is one of the great things about the car business is we've got different profit centers. We have new cars, used cars, service, and parts. Some dealerships have a body shop. And so I think, maybe for us, the bullet is, well, let's try this out in our new Volkswagen department. And let's see how it goes. I mean, we're going to commit to it, but we're not going to commit to it for the whole organization. Let's dabble in this a little bit, and then we can go full on and fire the cannonball if we think it's working.
Yeah, I love it. So obviously you're a man of short time these days, but I do know, based on what Jen told me, you're pretty active in the community. You and your family are pretty active here. So what are some ways that people in the community can interact with you and the dealership other than just walking in? Is there churches that they can interact with you at? Is there, social media? What is your presence inside of the community as it sits today?
Yeah, well, definitely I'm very involved in my church. So we go to a church called Grace Church in downtown Greenville, and been there for, so my wife and I are coming up on 20 years of marriage this year, and so we're excited about that. But we started going to Grace the year after we got married, and I actually got invited there by a couple of Furman undergrads.
Okay.
And so we were young back then, so we weren't that much different in age, but it's kind of funny to think about that. So being involved in, community group and that kind of thing. I'm a big believer in social media. I think it's actually really helped grow our business. And early on, I just had tried to kind of put myself out there. Try not to be too self-conscious. I'm not the smartest guy, certainly not the best looking guy, but just to kind of say, I'm just going to put it out there, and maybe the content that we create, or maybe my style or whatever isn't for everybody.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to kind of lay it out there, and if people want to get connected to this, one of the things we did early on was kind of making me the face of the dealership, which is not unique. Lots of car dealerships, have the dealer as their representative. But I think combining that with social media and being willing to kind of, early on I would go on Facebook and post and say, hey, I'm in the office today, and here's my cell phone number, and call me or text me if I can help in any way.
Yeah.
And that was just kind of unique and different, and like being willing to put yourself out there in the sense of, here's my cell phone number. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of you, the customer. Actually, if you have an issue, I want to hear about it. And kind of embracing that connection. And I do think that maybe now it's actually becoming less and less that way in our industry, because dealerships are merging and getting bigger. So more publicly traded dealerships, more very large dealership groups.
As we drive by this
right CarMax
now.
is a great example of that.
Yeah.
Here in Greenville, we've seen a lot of consolidation of dealership groups that are 10 or 50 or even 150 stores.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that we've kind of stuck to our guns on, is that while there have been opportunities in other cities to acquire dealerships, we really have tried to just kind of say, let's just keep growing here in Greenville. I love Greenville. I live 5 minutes from the dealership. It's a real blessing to be able to do business in your community. We have one campus that's now grown to about 15 acres of land with several buildings, including now a really nice trailer that we have Volvo in, because when we bought the dealership, it didn't come with real estate.
Yeah.
So we're going to be building a new facility. But I think just being able to kind of keep it here and local has been a lot of fun for me. That's not everybody's style, but just staying connected to this community has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, Greenville is so special. When my wife and I moved here, we didn't know it when we moved here, but it has a way of like capturing your heart. The people here are incredible. The atmosphere, the weather's pretty good.
Yeah. Beautiful day like today.
Yeah, I know. You can't complain, right? It's got a way of like luring you in. And one of my friends is a real estate agent, and his tagline to people that are out of state that he always tells them is like, don't visit here unless you're ready to move here, because you'll get hooked.
That's what we say about driving an Audi. Like, don't test drive it until you're ready to
Yeah,
buy it.
I know. And I told you my wife wants an R8 really bad, so here we are. Like, I'm gonna have to
I
tell
love
her.
that your wife wants an R8. Like, how fun is that?
She would trade this in a heartbeat to get an R8, and I would consider it. I love Camaros. I've always been a huge domestic guy. I grew up that way. My dad kind of bred me to be that, pigeonholed me into being that way. But I do love an R8. It's the ultimate daily supercar, is what it is. It's the ultimate.
You just need to do enough coaching to where you can buy both.
There you go. I love it. I love the concept. I'll pitch that to my wife and let her know. This has been great. You're incredible. I love what you've built, your dealership. As soon as I walked in, the experience that I got, even though I wasn't buying anything and I was meeting with you, was incredible. Everybody treated me like family. It was super cool. If you have not been in the Volkswagen or the Audi dealership in Greenville, stop in, say hi, look at the showroom. It's an incredible experience. And if you're in the market for buying a car, you got to give these guys a shot.
Oh, thanks, Ren. Yeah, it's a real pleasure to know you, and look forward to getting to know you better.
Absolutely.